We're ready to go.
It's there now? Good. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first Inventories and Nationally Determined Contributions Network meeting, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. We've set up this meeting today to enable some networking, given the current global situation that's a little bit difficult for many of us who are used to attending in-person meetings and meeting one another, and also to provide the opportunity for some research updates from some of our colleagues at the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the AFOLU Task Force on National Greenhouse Gas Inventories, the Technical Support Unit, and also some of our fellow research organisations and other networks on their activities and tools as they relate to the work of the Inventories and NDC network. So my name is Hazel Tomlin. I represent New Zealand as one of the network co-leads, along with Richard Eckard, who I will hand over to soon, and also Ngoni Chirinda, who's also online today. So in addition, I am one of the Secretariat to the Global Research Alliance, so I've met some of you through my role as that, and I will provide a quick update on the GRA as it relates to the Inventories and NDC network now. So I think most of the people on this call know that the core objective of the GRA is to grow more food without growing agricultural greenhouse gas emissions. I'm sure that everyone listening is already well aware that it's impossible to completely decouple agricultural emissions from food production. And so emissions from food production does become increasingly important in the future as other emission sources, like those from energy and transport, are decreased. The issue that we're facing of reducing global agricultural greenhouse gas emissions while increasing food production is really huge. Both human and financial resources are scarce, but we can accelerate action by working together. So the GRA and its networks are a vehicle for that. And to summarise where we're at with the GRA, we have now 65 member countries, with Cuba officially joining just 12 hours ago. We have 4 research groups and 18 research networks, of which the Inventories and NDC network is one of those. We have a GRA Council for Governance, and also the Secretariat and Special Representative, Hayden Montgomery, for international coordination of research efforts. So here's a list of some of our research partners, or all of our research partners. Many of you either have worked in the past or currently work for these research partners. And here's kind of the structure of the GRA in one image. We have the Paddy Rice Research Group, which is focused on reducing emission intensity of paddy rice cultivation systems. There are 3 subgroups for the Paddy Rice Research Group. That's Asia, Africa, and the Latin American subgroups. The Croplands Research Group is focused on reducing emission intensity of cropland production systems. The Livestock Research Group focuses on reducing emission intensity of livestock production systems, and the Integrative Research Group is focused on fostering collaboration across all of the research groups, and that's where the Inventories and NDC network sits. So here's a summary of all of the GRA networks. We currently have 18 networks, and the Inventories and NDC network potentially has the most diverse audience. So a number of these other networks will probably also be relevant for the work that you're doing. If you're not already connected with some of the other GRA networks, I would encourage you to go to the GRA website and take a look at the various activities and publications of each network as they relate to your work. So the fabric of the GRA is really in the strength and connectedness of our networks. Our decentralised research networks are crucial to research progress internationally. Through the Inventories and NDC network, we are hoping to bring the right people to the discussion table and to provide a forum for sharing the most up-to-date scientific progress, methodologies, and other key learnings on challenges that we're all facing. So Thank you. I will hand over to Richard now to introduce himself, the network aims, and update you on some of the progress and plans that we have for the Inventories and NDC network.
Great, thank you, Hazel. Hi, everyone. My name's Richard Eckhart. I'm a professor at the University of Melbourne, but a co-lead of the Inventories and NDC network, really as a function of the work that we do. So the aims of the network is to improve the evidence base and better connect governments and relevant expertise to subsequently improve the quality of agricultural nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement and the way their achievements are reflected in national greenhouse gas inventories. So that's a little bit of the purpose of today, is to start sharing some of that information, who's working in what area, doing what. And so we aim to work together to accelerate capture of mitigation technologies, increases in agricultural productivity and efficiency in national greenhouse gas inventories, which then underpin the policy and the mitigation decisions and subsequent NDC targets. So far, our network comprises around 300 people, some of which are inventory compilers, others are decision makers whose work is related to agricultural mitigation, and others who are policy actors working in the agricultural NDC space. Thanks, Hazel. So our initial focus of this network is to increase access to the methods to improve the collection of activity data that underpin our inventories, underpin emissions estimates, inform the collection of greenhouse gas emissions data where it's not previously been collected, providing technical support, training events, capacity building, knowledge transfer, sharing between us as a group. And that's part of today's purpose, is that sharing between us. Building upon existing shared databases, there are a number of databases we are aware of, and providing access to those, developing new platforms where necessary. And activities also include building in-country capabilities so that we can avoid the need for further outsourcing to international consultants. Countries can develop and take charge of their own inventories. Thanks, Hazel. There's a number of strategic alignments we've discovered since starting the network, and just a few of them are listed. There's probably not a full list, but just some of those who you'll see tonight or this morning. Greenhouse Gas Management Institute, you'll hear from the United States Environmental Protection Agency, one of the speakers today. Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research, the New Zealand Centre for Agricultural Greenhouse Gas Research Centre, FAO Enhanced Transparency Framework Network, and the Low Carbon Livestock Research Network. You'll hear from a number of these tonight. Thanks, Hazel. Probably just a plug for our newsletter. We have a newsletter that the network puts out, and we're always on the hunt for good news stories or for communication stories. So we invite you to, if you have a new development in your inventory or a research project you want to make us aware of, just to send us a few paragraphs to put into the newsletter. If it's a new algorithm that you've got to put into the inventory in your country, a project, please let us know, and we can put that out in the newsletter. And please go to the website and subscribe to our NDC's newsletter. Thanks, Hazel. And so there's a few plans we've got, communication events coming up, an agriculture sector national inventory compilers workshop, the date to be announced. So if you're interested in that, please contact us and we can put you in touch with that workshop. The Global Research Alliance coordinating summary resource of 2019 for IPCC refinements to national guidelines for greenhouse gas inventories. If you're interested in that, contact us. And then the newsletter, Who's Counting, please contact us as well on that. Great, thanks, Hazel. I think that's us, and the contact details are there if you want to come back to us. But I think we'll get straight into the various presentations. Hazel, did you want to do the first introduction?
Yes, sure, I can do that. So first up, we have Valentina Slivinska from the IPCC, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the work that they're doing as it relates to the Inventories and NDC network. Valentina, are you able to share your screen?
Let me try. I hope that it will work. Let me start. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So welcome. Hello to everybody. Thank you for inviting us to your workshop today. So I'm going to present the overview of activities on 2006 guidelines. And let me start my presentation. I'm going to focus on IPCC inventory software development, on IPCC emission factor database population, and on IPCC 2019 refinement. So just briefly on IPCC inventory software, so background. It was produced since 2012 by the IPCC Task Force on National Greenhouse Gas Inventories to assist inventory compilers in using the 2006 IPCC guidelines. So it's free to use. There is a free support to users provided by IPCC TFI TSU. And there is also the plan for updating to full methods, tiers, approaches within the 2006 IPCC guidelines funded. So IPCC inventory software functions are those listed here as administration functions like country, users, years. So there is also the function of the software contains also default data. It has data managers, land use, and livestock manager. Then there are worksheets for data entry. Also, there is a data archive option, and then data export and import option. And then there is also uncertainty analysis, key category analysis, and reference method. Next slide. The updates that are in the IPCC inventory software for now. General one, not one, but subnational disaggregation. We have approaches 1 and 2 for uncertainty analysis and for key category analysis, level and trend, time series export import, and translations. For AFOLU, there is a land representation that can be done on national and subnational levels. So all approaches 1 to 3, such as tracking of units of land across the inventory, time series, and annual land transition matrices is going to be implemented. So stock difference approach, all tier 2 methods included, wetland supplement methods and defaults, and user-defined soil and climate vegetation zoning. So here you may see the screenshot from the last version that has those updates, and it's not publicly available now, but here you may see on the screen the approach 3 for LULUCF component. So here you may see how you may track by each unit of land, actually the land use subcategory, previous one changes, and then you may also see the year of conversion. So all these changes are going to be released within the new version that is under the development now. So here you may see also the stock difference approach implemented for forest land. So it will be able, the software will help to implement this methodology too, as it's shown in this on this slide. So also, this is the example how wetland supplement, for instance, revetted peatlands can be emissions can be accounted from these lands too in the updated version of the software. Now let me briefly describe the IPCC emission factor database. That is actually a library of emission factors and other parameters with background documentation and technical references that can be used for estimation of GHG emissions and removals in the inventories. So data collected there is our default values from IPCC guidelines, data from peer review papers, and data from other publications. So there are two types of application, one on a web application and other one is offline application. So user may define the EFDB is not intended for authorization of use of specific emission factors, and it hasn't been subject to formal IPCC review processes. So it serves as a library where inventory compilers can find EFs suitable to the inventories by their own judgment. EFDB evolves across time through a continuous process of data population and platform management. So data proposals submitted to the editorial board from researchers, inventory experts, and data collection efforts. So expert meetings to collect data, literature sources by our unit, and so others. So the emission factor database is open to any data proposals. Data proposals are considered by EFDB editorial board for inclusion into the EFDB, just following the criteria for inclusion of new data, its robustness, applicability, and documentation. So this is the brief figure how the consideration of data is going on before entering the EFDB. So from the data provider, from the data meeting, the data may come, and from the TSU, and then editorial board consider this data on the how it's in line with the criteria, and then entering the EFDB by their decision on it. So here you may see how this is the screenshot how the emission factor database main page looks like. So you may search the emission factors using different search options. So by specific gas, by status of search. So there are a lot of details that you may use while searching for the specific emission factor that you want to apply. So then let me briefly stop on the 2019 refinement and the updates on volume for agriculture, forestry, and other land use. So refinements are made in all chapters except chapter 9 on other land. So contains annexes. Annex 1 is mapping tables, and Annex 2 is worksheets. So the refinements include new and updated default data, as well as new and up-to-date information and guidance. So updated and new guidance on land representation is there. So approaches where approach 3 is for tracking unit of land across time, methods for estimating areas of land use and land use change. So combining multiple data sources, derivation of IPCC land use categories from land cover information. So there is also new guidance on the use of allometric models and biomass density maps for estimation of biomass, and also elaborated guidance on application of tier 3 methods, model-based and measurement-based. So new guidance on interannual variability, so optional voluntary approach for disaggregation of total emissions and removals for the managed land proxy into those that are associated with human effects and those due to natural disturbances. Then elaborated updated guidance on developing consistent time series through extrapolation based on functional relationships. So let me also, there is a tier 2 steady state method for soil organic carbon changes in cropland, updated stock change factors for tier 1, new guidance for estimation stock change in mineral soils associated with biochar amendments. Also with regard to flooded land, new guidance for estimation CH4 emissions from flooded land remaining flooded land. Land converted to flooded land, there are some updates on guidance for estimation CO2 emissions based on CO2 fluxes instead of carbon stock changes, new guidance for estimation of CH4 emissions, and optional approach to develop indicative estimates of the anthropogenic component of total CO2 and non-CO2 emissions from flooded lands. So with regard on livestock, tier 2 gross energy calculation extended to goat, methane emission factor for enteric fermentation derived from DMI, new methane emission factors for enteric fermentation for llamas and ostrich, manure management, new advanced tier 1 method, and then 50% of equations updated, 10 new equations added, and 27 new equations annexed. And the last one is, let's say, not the last one in my presentation, is harvested food products. So maintains the existing approaches in the 2006 IPCC guidance and elaborated and updated guidance. So it's detailed guidance on wood products in use, including good practice in the choice of method, delineation of the boundaries of different approaches, and clarifying essential differences among those. clarification on estimating for emission associated with the HVP used for energy purpose, disaggregation of semi-finished harvested food product commodity classes into three instead of two, and updated and new parameters such as default conversion factors and half-life of HVP commodity classes. Thank you. Thank you for this. And that's it, Jan.
Great, thank you, Valentina. I appreciate your presentation. And is there anyone online who has a question, and you can just unmute yourself and pose your question, or put your hand up and we'll see it and be able to throw it to you for a question? I'll probably start off just while people are thinking about a question. Has there been any discussion about what I call emission factor analogs? In other words, the logic that if you're in a particular latitude in a particular country and there's another country nearby, that emission factors from the one country are applicable across. For example, developed versus developing, you know, there might be research in one country that has got refined emission factors that can cross-apply.
Actually, in the structure of EFDB, the user may find exactly the emission factor that covers the circumstances and conditions in the more appropriate way for their purpose, I mean, for that country. So considering that the EFDB is populating continuously, and more emission factors with the variability of conditions and properties are there, so I guess users may find more appropriate for their own purpose and needs some emission factors there. So I would suggest not to focus on something that can be applicable to the different, let's say, covering more territories, but find the specific one for your needs. So try to search, try to use all the possible way to source this emission factor, and then apply for the purpose of inventory.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other? There's a question there. If you can read it, and maybe are you able to read the chat there? And how long does it take IPCC update or publish the emission factor information submitted by any researcher?
Actually, every year we have meeting of editorial board for emission factor database. And then we have some certain list of data sources that propose, usually some of them are proposed by researchers, and they are, during this process, this meeting, they are considering by the EB members. So, and then just after their conclusion, in case if the data proposed is in line with the criteria of robustness, applicability, and documentation. So this data after the decision taken by EB members goes, I mean, maybe it takes 1 week, or it's uploaded to the EFDB. So the process is not so, I would say every year it's continuous process of consideration new emission factors. Yeah, but we are open to any proposals from the researchers from everywhere in order to consider new data, new emission factors possibly to be entered into EFDB.
Great, thank you. I see, Ole, you have a question. Would you want to unmute yourself and ask it?
Thank you. I'm unmuted. So first, thank you very much for your presentation, Valentina. Very much appreciated. The question is, you mentioned that IPCC is preparing the new version of the IPCC software. Could you give us some indication when this will be released?
Thank you very much. I guess this is a very good question, and I guess a lot of people are interested in this matter. I would kindly ask maybe to Sandro to help me to reply on it, because we are on the process, we are on the way. And please, Sandro, could you please indicate the time frame?
Yes, we don't have a date. It depends. We have many updates to do, so there is not a date. We don't expect to release this anyhow in a short time, because we are doing a lot of updates, and we will, since the new version won't be compatible with the previous one, we will release only at once it's completed, because otherwise we will keep people asking people to input the data continuously. So once the new one will be completed, it will be published, it won't be consistent with the previous one. The user may decide to keep using the old one. It's not my suggestion, but otherwise they need to input again all the data in the new one. This is the situation. So there is not a date, not this year for sure.
Great, thank you. Valentina, there was another question there from Depitica. For the emission factor to be recognized by the EF database, does it need to have a national study or can it be derived from case studies?
Let me say that the sources for emission factors to be considered for EFDB can be very different. So starting from the peer review journals, national inventory reports, and others. But the main focus here is the criteria for the inclusion. So one of the main criteria is robustness. So that checks whether the methodology is not biased. So the methodology used for deriving emission factor is robust, and then also the second criteria of applicability. So the editorial board also considering how these emission factors can be applicable for inventory purposes, but not only for the national inventory as a main purpose of EFDB, but also for other purposes such as project-based activity, inventory activities, so on. So I guess I hope that I answered the question if I understood this correctly.
That's fine. Florencia has another question. I think you'll find this one straightforward to answer. Thank you for your presentation. She says, are there guidelines available for determining emission factors?
Actually, the 2006 guidelines is the main, let's say, the main driver for searching the emission factors. If you start with the default one, and then there is also there are decision trees in the guidelines. They guide you how to move forward in order to provide more accurate estimates. And first you start with the default values, and then if you have some national capacity to provide and to apply emission factors that are national emission factors, sorry. So then you move forward with this. So just following the guidelines and the decision trees there for each category.
I'd say look at the guidelines, but also speak to other researchers on how to design research projects that can deliver emission factors, because we've had a lot of experience with experiments that have been conducted and then they hope to get an emission factor, but they haven't had an appropriate control treatment in the experiment. And so there's rules about how to design experiments that can be validly used as well, aren't there?
Actually, we don't provide the rules for determining the emission factors. So it's a country, I mean, it's research driving, I guess, the driving process by researchers. So they decide which methodology to apply. And then because we are not reviewing the emission factors, the purpose of emission factor database is actually the inventory purpose and applicability, and let's say in line with the 2006 guidelines. So researchers are free to apply methodology, whatever they think that is the best one, but we don't provide specific one for them.
We had a lot of experience in determining nitrous oxide emission factors. In some experiments, you actually can't get a valid emission factor out of the design they've used. So I think for Florencia, it's if you're planning experiments along that line, have a chat to some researchers who've published data that have been used in emission factors and how they design their experiments. I think in terms of time, we might have to keep moving on. So Valentina, thank you very much for your presentation. We'll now move on to John Stella from the United States Environment Protection Agency, working on inventory development there. So look forward to hearing from you, John, if you can share your screen with us and present. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Richard. Let me share my screen really quickly. see, hopefully it's coming through okay now.
That's great. Thank you. We can see it.
Perfect. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm John Steller. I'm with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency within EPA's Climate Change Division. I'm one of the coordinators for the agriculture, forestry, and land use components of EPA's development of the U.S. greenhouse gas inventory. And I'll be touching today on some of our upcoming and ongoing projects related to inventory capacity building and some of the tools that we've been developing around that space. So our new or somewhat new project is coined as the Transparency Accelerator for Greenhouse Gas Inventories. And so this is a multi-government, US government project led by EPA with the sole focus of improving the technical capacity of utilizing the 2006 guidelines for developing countries as they transition to reporting under the UNFCCC Enhanced Transparency Framework. So our primary tracks of work include bilateral capacity building technical support, which we're helping countries and assisting countries in utilizing the 2006 guidelines for inventory development. But more generally, we want to be also developing tools and templates for general use that will be widely available, free online for anybody to use as part of their inventory development, which I'll get into in a couple of slides. And so just an overview of the project, it currently runs through 2023, likely into 2024 to support the Enhanced Transparency Framework, and covers all greenhouse gas inventories with a special emphasis on the agriculture, forestry, and other land use sector. So as part of our ongoing work and moving forward, just a couple of notes in terms of what we see as our sort of our priorities, our lessons learned, and what we hope to do moving forward. I think a key piece of our work and where we end up working is assisting countries with building and implementing the institutional arrangements necessary for ensuring that their inventory system is sustainable and has longevity to it, given the more rigorous reporting under the Enhanced Transparency Framework. One of the key pieces about our program that we've implemented over a number of years is what we call this learning by doing approach, with ultimately the goal of helping countries produce a transparent, accurate, consistent, comparable, and complete inventory, the TAC principles. And so we don't want to just be providing training for countries and then leaving them to essentially produce the inventory on their own. Ideally, the end goal would be to have countries be producing this on their own, but as part of this work, we actually want to be working with the country as they're developing their inventory to build that technical capacity as part of their annual or biannual process. A key piece of our work and a really important tie into this meeting is obviously we want to be avoiding duplication with other projects that are ongoing, and ideally find collaboration opportunities to make this work a little bit easier for everybody, but also have legs and make it sustainable long term. And then a key piece of EPA's previous capacity building work, but that will be a cornerstone of it moving forward, is this National Greenhouse Gas Inventory System Toolkit that EPA has developed a number of years ago, which essentially takes key pieces of the UN and IPCC guidelines and put them into this system toolkits and templates, which essentially guides a inventory compiler through all of the documentation necessary for their national inventory system. So it covers institutional arrangements, methods and data, quality assurance, quality control, key category analysis, archiving, and improvement planning. And so moving forward, we do plan to make some updates to these toolkits and trainings. And we've already been doing so with collaboration from FAO as well as the Secretariat, and we'll continue to be improving these templates moving forward. A key piece will be translating the templates, not just from English, but into Spanish and French, and then other languages as necessary to help their distribution. Another key tool that EPA had developed under a previous capacity building project that we'll be updating moving forward is we call the ALU tool or ALU tool, the Agriculture and Land Use Greenhouse Gas Inventory software, which guides a compiler through the process of estimating their emissions for the agriculture and forest activities. So we had created ALU a number of years ago because obviously it's recognized that the agriculture and forestry land use sector poses a key challenge for many developing countries and ends up often being a larger component in terms of emissions and sinks of their inventories compared to developing countries. And so ALU was designed to essentially create that functionality to help guide the compilers through the process of putting together their inventory, provide data management capabilities, utilize and encourage IPCC good practice. And so the software is based on the methods from the 2006 IPCC guidelines. And the whole idea is to try and simplify the process. And so the tool walks you through a number of steps to facilitate the compilation of activity data, emission factors, and then the completion of calculations. The tool facilitates the use of tier 2 and tier 1 methods, and particularly for enteric fermentation, which ends up being quite often a key category in a number of developing countries. It allows for really detailed and disaggregated livestock types to be included within the tool. And then another key function of the tool is it facilitates the use of remote sensing-based products to achieve complete land representation across the time series. So moving forward, in collaboration with two of our key partners, U.S. Forest Service, who has expertise with the U.S.'s own greenhouse gas inventory development, and Colorado State, who developed the tool under our previous capacity building effort, there are a number of updates that we're looking to make that will be rolling out over the next probably 2 years. One of the key pieces is rounding out the guidelines. Currently, the ALU tool is missing functionality for harvested wood products and dead organic matter. And then moving forward, we do want to look into the possibility of incorporating the 2013 wetland supplement from the IPCC. Currently, the tool facilitates a mitigation analysis, just an emissions mitigation component, but we do want to add an economic mitigation component. So you could ideally be able to add the ability of incorporating adjusting carbon prices and different carbon prices and see how those essentially help you decide where to get the most bang for your buck in terms of mitigation practices within the agriculture sector. And as Valentina had touched upon, there's a lot of really good work going on with the IPCC software. And so a key piece we're looking into is developing sort of these import-export data templates, so that way users who are interested in the IPCC software but also future UNFCCC reporting tables have the ability to transfer data between the various softwares quite seamlessly, given that there is a lot of interest in all of these as sort of a suite of tools. Currently, the tool is only available as a desktop version, and so moving forward, we are looking into developing that as an online version, which will also help us troubleshooting any user problems that we see across various users across the globe in more of a real time. But also looking at developing these API endpoints, which would create the ability for other software systems to essentially interact with AFOLU and allow for developers to create sort of their own functionality and uses. And then the last thing I'll touch upon is the big thing that we see with this tool is it is rather clunky. It does require a lot of sort of know-how and training to be able to use. And so a key piece that we're looking into is improving the user functionality and overall user friendliness of the tool to make it much more easier to use, and hopefully will provide a little bit more uptick in the users of the tool. And then the last slide I'll touch upon is under our previous work, when countries are needing to develop a consistent land representation, one of the things that we continue to see is how do countries address various inconsistencies between so many data sets that their countries are compiling, and how it all fits together for their land representation, specifically for the land use change and forestry sector. And so in collaboration with our US Forest Service and other key partners who help put together the land representation for the US greenhouse gas inventory, moving forward, we're going to be developing what we're calling this standardized workflow or land representation schema that will essentially help countries figure out ways to harmonize different data sets that are often developed for different purposes. So within the US, we have National Resources Inventory that's primarily focused on agriculture. We have Forest Inventory and Analysis, which is our National Forest Inventory Monitoring System. But we also have remote sensing data sets. These don't fit together necessarily cleanly. And so as part of this process for the US putting together their land representation, there's a lot of data harmonization that goes into that. And so we're looking to essentially distill all of this information and produce some sort of data product and tool that can be widely available to all countries to assist them with similar challenges that they may find. And I don't have too much more on this at the moment because we're still kicking this project off, but more to come, and we'll be happy to update folks as we move along. So that is it for me. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, John. That was really great. And we actually didn't mention, but we've got a discussion section at the end of all of our presenters for questions. So unless there are any burning questions directly relevant to John at the moment, we will move on to Andreas. So I see no questions in the chat, so I'll hand over to you, Andreas. And Andreas Wilkes is currently leading the inventory development program for the New Zealand Agricultural and Greenhouse Gas Research Centre. But I'll let you introduce yourself, Andreas.
Thank you very much, Hazel. Let me just work out how to do my share here, and tell me when you can see this on the screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Great. So I'm just going to very briefly give an overview of some inventory support activities that we're implementing at the New Zealand Agriculture Greenhouse Gas Research Centre on behalf of the New Zealand government. A bit of background. Most of you, I suppose, in this meeting are quite familiar with this. This is a picture showing the 92 or so countries that have included livestock in their initial NDCs. We haven't updated this yet for the latest round of updated NDCs. About 92 countries want to target livestock mitigation. But then if we look at which countries actually use the tier 2 approach, it's much fewer. And particularly we notice in Africa and Southeast Asia, many countries have ambition for livestock sector mitigation, but don't have tier 2 inventories that are capable of tracking the effects of mitigation actions. Looking at agroforestry, we did a review of countries around the world that have included agroforestry in their NDCs. I just want to focus here briefly on Africa. About 70% of African countries included agroforestry in their NDCs. But when we look at how they're actually reporting agroforestry carbon stocks, stock changes, only 2 out of 50 countries on the continent have explicitly reported agroforestry carbon stock changes. And if you look in the different ways that the inventories report carbon stock change in croplands, less than a third are reporting any carbon stock change in croplands. So what I want to say here is that there's a big gap between the ambition that a lot of developing countries have and the capacity of the inventories to track change towards those ambitions. And that's kind of the background to the support initiative that New Zealand is leading. So it's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, together with the Ministry of Primary Industries, which is supporting a climate smart agriculture initiative. 3 main objectives. The first is to improve national GHG inventories so that they're capable of tracking the kinds of changes that countries are targeting achieving. The second is then to support these countries in effectively participating in global science, innovation, and technology partnerships. And at this stage, a third objective is to identify low emission options in the agriculture sector. Specific lines of support, there are 5 different lines that we're developing. The first is capability building, so training and research grants. The second, and this is the area of work that I'm leading, which is the improved greenhouse gas inventories with a particular focus on the livestock sector and on implementing tier 2 approaches in the inventories. A third is supporting the development of measurement hubs in different regions. So the physical infrastructure and the human capacity to actually improve measurements undertaken in developing country regions. We also will be supporting regional research projects and small-scale pilot mitigation activities. So that's a general overview of the activities. The target is to deliver this support together with 6 countries in Southern and East Africa and in Southeast Asia. The program began quite recently, so we're still in the early stages of discussion with potential country partners. In Kenya, we're assessing priority needs within the livestock sector. In Malawi, we're in the very early stages of discussion in this. Uganda, we've agreed a work plan and we're just in discussions on the implementation modalities. And in Zambia, we're discussing with the Ministry of Fisheries and Livestock on a work plan to develop a tier 2 inventory, and similar in Zimbabwe. In Southeast Asia, countries that we're currently engaging with, Cambodia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Livestock, and Vietnam, and the discussions are all around the livestock topic, with further countries to be added later. So it's a 4-year program through the first year, and we look forward within the next few months to be able to share with everyone exactly what the agreed plans with each country are, and also in that process, as John just mentioned, to coordinate with other partners to make sure that the support that we provide is complementary to and mutually supportive with other partnerships that the countries are engaged in. So specifically, based on the current discussions, what we'll most likely end up working on, Tier 2 livestock inventory compilation, including building related institutional arrangements and capacity building, some work to identify not only priority emission sources in the inventories, but also mitigation options, and then support to developing MRV systems for mitigation actions, and training and research grants. So these are some of the activities that are currently under discussion, and the type, just illustrative of the type of support that we'll most likely be providing. So as I mentioned, we're 6 months into a 4-year program. So watch this space. We'd love to coordinate, of course, with the country partners, but also with other development partners engaged in those countries and in the wider region for knowledge sharing. And we hope to, we certainly will be updating the community through the newsletter that Richard mentioned, as well as other communications through the GRA. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Andreas. And I won't ask any specific questions of you because we're already trying to sort of develop more greater collaboration together. And actually that, so if there are any specific questions of clarification for Andreas, otherwise we'll hold those questions to the general Q&A session. Nothing specific came through on the chat, but we'll get to a general Q&A. But it does lead me on to the next speaker, who actually is technically already collaborating with Andreas, Natalie Doran-Brown, who is a research scientist at the University of Melbourne and leads our Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research project in this area. Natalie actually works in my team at the University of Melbourne, and we'll talk to you about the work that she's doing. Natalie, hand over to you.
Thank you, Richard. Just getting my settings right here.
We can see your presentation fine. It's looking good.
Yeah, so this ACIAR project, the Australia team is based at the University of Melbourne and Queensland University of Technology. I'm Natalie Doran-Brown, and I work with Richard at University of Melbourne, and we work alongside our colleagues in the governments of both Fiji and Vietnam on this particular project to support the development of national inventory and mitigation systems. So just a bit of background to this project, because the first stage went for a couple of years, and we're about to launch into the second part of the project. But we work with our Fijian partners through the Climate Change Division at the Ministry of Economy and also the Ministry of Agriculture. And in Vietnam, we work with MAD, which is the Ministry of Agricultural and Rural Development. So initially, this project conducted a broad overview of the existing inventory systems in Fiji and Vietnam. And the aim was to identify priority areas where we could direct future projects and future funding. Part of the analysis was around looking at the co-benefits of mitigation options. So as we know, mitigation options that have strong co-benefits are far more likely to be implemented than those that don't. And we're looking at those co-benefits in relation to the specific environments in Fiji and Vietnam. We also developed a governance checklist, and this checklist was designed so that countries could start walking through and working through the process to develop governance systems around things like institutional arrangements, aligning with existing policies for action around climate change, things like measurement, reporting and verification, gender awareness in different policies, and a continual cycle of improvement. So the capacity gaps analysis, even though we were looking at two countries that are at different stages of development of their inventory, there was still a number of common capacity gaps. And some of that was around building expertise in calculating the agricultural portion of the national inventory. There's also guiding policy from the national level through to local levels, improving communication between data providers and collators. So that's, for example, from universities, extension officers, private sector providers, and the various ministries such as the Agricultural Ministry, through to those ministries that are managing the national communications. And so another requirement was the development of a central data repository system. And as we've heard already of a couple of systems, there are some great developments that are happening in existing systems to record data. So this is around activity data, but also emission factors. And there are some requirements to also look at data around co-benefits and the barriers to implementation. And further down the track, once mitigation options have been analysed, then also considering the cost-benefit analysis of the various options. So on the mitigation side, we have a fairly strong focus on mitigation because there's in-depth knowledge in our project team around mitigation options and mitigation research for both livestock and cropping systems. So it was clear that a further focus was required around developing tier 2 local emission factors. And this could be through the transfer of knowledge, such as training in the best practice methods for measuring tier 2 emissions, or the publication of local emission factors. So this brings us up to where we currently are with the project. So we've moved on from a broad overview of the gaps, and we're just drilling down further into what our project can specifically focus on moving forward. So doing a more detailed analysis. So there are a number of groups working in this space in both Fiji and Vietnam. So throughout all stages of this, we're wanting to be aware of other groups, be in contact or collaborate with other groups so that we can complement one another's research, and also avoid the duplication of effort. So some of the potential areas that we're considering, as I mentioned, looking at various mitigation options. So prioritizing those options that have the most promise from our existing analysis. Also developing the MRV system specifically for those mitigation options and how that might tie back into the NDCs. So there's also a need to develop mitigation and climate policy, whether that's the use of policy levers to encourage change at the farm management level, or looking at gender-aware approaches. So all ACIAR projects have a component looking at how gender is affected through mitigation options. And we're also looking at the national inventory systems. So if there are gaps there that aren't being covered by other groups, we may develop some of those systems. And this is a continuation of the governance checklist that we developed in the first stage. So we're currently finalising what the project will be looking at going forward, prioritising those gaps. As mentioned, we've already been in contact with a number of groups working in Fiji and Vietnam. And I'll just also mention that the project reports from the first part of our project are available if they are of interest to anyone, including the governance checklist.
Great. Thanks, Natalie. Over to you, Hazel. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm not sure. I wasn't online before, was I? My apologies. Thank you so much, Natalie. That was really great. I think we'll move straight on to Olia. If you're there, Olia, and ready to present.
Yes.
Yeah, so Olia is Director of MRV Systems at GHGMI, and we've done a lot of work together so far. Olia, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. Indeed, I'm working at Greenhouse Gas Management Institute, and some of you are my good friends and colleagues, which is very nice. Today I wanted to focus first on what GHGMI is doing in terms of MRV systems collaboration and interests, and then I will continue a nice logical path laid down by Natalie on Asia-Pacific area and introduce a specific project that GHGMI is currently running in this region. Okay, so GHGMI is focused on several aspects of MRV. To begin with, we provide education in all IPCC sectors, including agriculture and forestry separately. We also help developing countries to establish and develop their MRV systems, including greenhouse gas inventories, using mostly learning by doing approach whenever possible, but we also engaged in classic capacity building events like workshops, seminars, and in online sessions and in-person training and coaching sessions. So to support that work, we develop templates and information systems. Templates are mostly focused on activity data collection for sectoral data. And currently we're engaged in a project on software development on LAMPS platform. And this one is focused on different sectoral activity data collection processes and procedures, We currently completed the first installment for the energy sector, which is undergoing user acceptance testing as we speak, and planning to cover the other sectors in the future. Right. So, as I said, to illustrate the activities of GHGMI, we will use the Asia-Pacific area and the special project which we run together with ICAT on Fiji. So the project objectives were to establish sectoral MRV systems for agriculture and to build national capacity in developing the blueprint of MRV system for Fiji in the agricultural sector, to improve MRV systems in terms of greenhouse gas agricultural inventory for the categories prioritized by the government of Fiji, and also apply ICAT tools to policy impact assessment in agricultural sector. And of course, the project will also develop recommendations for including agricultural sector policies in Fiji enhanced NDC. Well, here I want to introduce the project roadmap. So we begin from identifying and strengthening institutional arrangements in Fiji in relation to agricultural sector, also identify data sources and flows, and ensure that emerging experts in Fiji will master agricultural methodology as an IPCC guidelines. The next layer of the project includes the building on the first one. So we will create the evidence base for the agricultural policy development and assessment. And this is in terms of greenhouse gases and sustainable development system. Based on that is the third level, which includes growing national expertise, inventory improvement in general, sustainable development, and climate mitigation, which uses agricultural inventory data as the basis and the benchmark for the mitigation projects. And in the further future, we envision the building of national inventory team. It's of course beyond this project, but we will hopefully contribute to that. Country-specific emission factors, nationally determined contribution, and mitigation measures. So this is coming into the future. Right. The approach to the work plan for this project includes 4 core stones. The first one is having the project coordinator who is based in Fiji and is emerging Fijian expert and provided training to that project coordinator. The second one, create a team of agricultural experts who would be well educated in terms of IPCC guidelines and who will probably create the core of inventory team for agriculture in Fiji for the future. Of course, we can't envision the project and development of MRV systems in Fiji without very strong collaboration and involvement of Fiji government. And here I'm talking about the Climate Change Division and the Ministry of Economy and Ministry of Agriculture. If this goes further, then obviously the Ministry of Forestry would be involved and some other ministries like Ministry of Sugar, etc. But we start small, so we start from these 2 ministries. Last but not the least is the synergetic approach to the project, including strong cooperation with our colleagues from different countries, organizations, and their approach to work on MRV systems. And here I'm happy to say that we're working closely with Global Research Alliance, with ACIAR, and with US EPA, who will be probably with whom we will be involved in the next project on identifying potential gap in assisting Fiji and how these gaps can be filled with the skills that different organizations and agencies could provide. We also enjoy our familiarity and collaboration with the GAUS International. This is a company who is tasked with building first biennial update report for Fiji. The expected outcomes of the project include having a blueprint for MRV system of mitigation for agricultural sector. making sure that Fiji will have adequate capacity to manage and implement effective national MRV and transparency system in agricultural sector and report under Paris Agreement. We also envision as an outcome is successful application of good practice and tools in terms of integrate transparency of climate policies and evidence-based policy making in Fiji agricultural sector. And of course, the policymakers in Fiji are well equipped to identify domestic benefits and synergies from enhanced climate action policy transparency. The project activities include several groups. I won't be stopping at each of those. We don't have enough time for that. But a group of activity will include development of workshops on greenhouse gas inventory to help Fiji emerging experts to use learning by doing approach into Fiji agricultural inventory prioritized categories. The second part is agricultural policy assessment. We will be training Fiji experts on ICAT tools to do greenhouse gas and sustainable development assessment. And of course, agricultural institutional system for MRV development. The training plan will include both formal training at GHGMI using the course on agriculture we offer, training on ICAT policy assessment, and training on institutional arrangement and systems. The work plan deliverables will include the greenhouse gas inventory estimates and instruction manual for calculating 3 greenhouse agricultural sources like livestock, manure management, enteric fermentation, and rice cultivation. Also, reporting will include estimates of greenhouse gases and greenhouse gas and sustainable development impact of agricultural policies, of 2 policies in particular, and national system guidelines manual for agricultural sector that hopefully will be used in future inventories in Fiji. And of course, we are providing training and delivery support to Fiji. Right. As for status to date, we completed the preliminary work on the project, established the inventory team and emerging policy experts, as well as project coordinator. We're currently moving into the phase of workshops. It will be intense season of workshops, I would say, about 4 workshops or 3 months, and we hope that it will go successfully. Right. So now I have time for questions and answers, but I guess that is going to be shifted towards the joint question and answer session later in this session. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Aurelia. I really appreciate your presentation, and obviously I'm aware of a fair bit of what you're presenting there because we're in discussion about how to work together already, and I think that highlights why these types of sessions are so important, because we discover people working in similar countries with similar objectives and how we can then sort of bring our efforts together to be more effective. Thank you very much. The next speaker, we've got 2 speakers left, is Mirella Salvatore from Climate Change Officer at the United Nations FAO and co-lead of the FAO Enhanced Transparency Framework. Mirella, are you there and can come on screen and give us your presentation? Thank you. There you go. That's good. We can see that. Excellent.
Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you so much. Let me move it in presentation mode and let's see if everything is working properly. Okay, thank you so much. So, yes, my name is Mirella Salvatore. I'm the Climate Change Officer working in the Office of Climate Change at the FAO. But under the Climate Change Office, I'm working on the NDC support expert team inside the office. So mostly we are working on several issues that are related to the NDC, the National Determined Contribution, where I'm mostly leading at the transparency area. And in reality here, what I want to discuss is not necessarily only the overall FAO work on transparency, but also focusing a little bit more on what is the so-called CBAT AFOLU program, where CBAT stands for the Capacity Building Initiative on Transparency for the AFOLU sector. So where the objective is to support countries in strengthening their capacity in terms of institutional arrangements, monitoring, reporting, and verification, and also the monitoring and evaluation for the adaptation action, as there will be this also additional reporting in the forthcoming biannual transparency report. The program also seen the production of several development of tools of the global projects that help to address the country needs. So usually we work closely with the country to understand what they need to move towards their commitment on the BTRs. We also work a lot in building a knowledge sharing and peer-to-peer exchange. And as all of you said, really in all these different presentations, it's also our interest in coordinating among the different transparency initiatives, but not only, and also internally to coordinate our global project. Indeed, is overseeing also the overall FAO national projects on capacity building on initiative transparency. So far, we have around 15 countries covered with the national specific objectives and the specific funds that they are funded by the Global Environment Facility. What is our work? So we tend to work at the country level in different modalities. Also COVID helped us really to identify new modalities. So not necessarily seen in a negative way, but also in a sort of different way to be close to the country with several opportunities. And the one that we are really proud is the one-to-one mentoring that is really effective and produce results moving towards the reporting in the country. We also handle a webinar series on specific on the topic of the modalities procedures and guidelines. And indeed, John also participated to one of these webinars on institutional arrangement. We also handle technical training and regional workshop, and most of them we are doing also in conjunction with the UNFCCC and with the IPCC. In terms of tools, we develop different kind of modalities of tools and methodologies. We also develop a series of e-learnings related on ETF and GHG inventories. We work a lot on knowledge sharing. As I was saying, we are having the ETF website. We have already in place a transparency in agriculture and land use sector network. And by the end of this month, so we will be able also to start publishing the roster of transparency practitioners that is based on the transparency network and who adhere to be part of the transparency roster. So working our coordination efforts, we continue really to work on partnership, produce a joint product and disseminate the knowledge. So that is our main objective. Here there is just a wider range of work that we are doing in terms of products and tools for enhancing transparency. We are reviewing several tools. We are also in this perspective also trying to support also IPCC to identify a way to evolve also the IPCC software. We produce a different kind of methodology tools, so modeling framework, a guide, template, specific study, Excel-based tool, data sets, maps, training packaging, methodology. So any kind of wide range of tools based on really the response of the country when we provide the technical training in the country. So as I was saying, we are part of the so-called NDC support team, where we are also focusing on working on also specific tools and products also for the I&NDC. In the context of the enhanced transparency framework, we are mostly looking at how then to track the progress of the I&NDC, and producing also tools like the National Determined Contribution Expert tools that help countries to set up baseline scenarios to go forward in the I&NDC. This is not the only work that we are doing in terms of the NDC. We are also working a lot in analyzing how the agricultural sector was framed in the I&NDC, and now we are already doing also on the second submission. Indeed, just in these days during the post session on the Substack, we are producing the new overlook of the I&NDC and the AFOLU sector. We are also producing a specific regional reports on really identifying also the gaps and opportunities for country in addressing the agricultural sector in the I&NDC. So, and actually right now we have also in place a joint program with UNDP that is working mostly on trying to move forward on the implementation of the I&NDC. But we support also country in developing the so-called NAMA, the National Action for Mitigation Action, National Prepared Mitigation Action, sorry. Also helping the country to identify resources and leveraging funds from different sources, but in particular, we are also investigating a lot this year on the NAMA facility for the ambition initiatives. As we said, we are preparing also a series of e-learning that comes all together. And first of all, we address mostly the inventory issues under the enhanced transparency framework. But we have already put in place in the past the National Greenhouse Gases Inventory for land use and for agriculture that really guide the user how to really estimate a tier 1 emissions from the sector, the AFOLU sector. As all of you flagged, indeed, we know very well that the AFOLU sector is quite challenging for several countries. So we go in really in that, in search of technical specificity. We help them also with a specific exercise to put in place in order to ensure that the capacity is practical in trying to address the estimation of the emission on the sector. But we started to realize also, talking with the country, that we needed to move a little bit forward. And indeed, over the summer, they are coming out also 2 other learnings in the series. One is focusing on the issues of the uncertainty, just because also under the enhanced transparency framework, this topic on uncertainty has been also flagged in several parts. So we are trying to have a specific focus on the land use, because it's a slightly having a peculiar way to address the uncertainty in the specific sector. We know very well about, as everybody is raising, also the importance of the methane emissions from the livestock sector, and in particular on the indirect fermentation from the for developing country. And so we are helping country to understand the data needs and the way how to move from tier 1 to tier 2, looking at the IPCC guidelines, and not only the 2006, but also having also already a closer look to the 2019, just to be ready and not necessarily to become obsolete in the coming year. As we said, we also put in place a webinar series to explore the MPGs in very details. So far, we already handled 4 webinar series looking at the overall transparency issues, the role of institutional arrangement, the quality assurance of a national greenhouse gases inventory management system. And this one was done in conjunction with the work that we do together with the UNFCCC in supporting the country in addressing the concern of the quality assurance and quality control. We did a specific one on greenhouse gases inventory, so explaining really the differences that the MPGs are really addressing in that perspective. The forthcoming 3 maybe, we have one specific on I&NDC tracking, and the forthcoming also the one on adaptation reporting. COVID and behind. So the project was designed before the area of COVID. So in reality, that was during the implementation is not what exactly we meant to do it, but we were more thinking to support the country directly with in-personal training and in-country support. But we had to rephrase ourselves due to COVID. And so we took the advantages of putting in place the Transparency in Agriculture and Land Use Sector Network. And we started to realize really the different way to work with the country that's according to what I'm deriving as a lesson from the COVID area is that in reality, they just in-country stop with just one mission. It's not sufficient to bring the country in a more specific objective of increasing their capacity. So we are thinking also for the future of a sort of mixed approach of in-country support with a physical event, mostly for building the trust that was quite complicated during these years, and then continue to maintain the linkages with country with the specific one-to-one mentoring or leveraging on the network to try to share the experience of the lesson learned, what country are doing to moving towards the 2024 for the BTR submission. So the network is having 3 main principles: open to everybody, to everyone, is inclusive, is very friendly, it's not a formal places in a where everybody can raise question, everybody can provide their feedback or their question on to the other people. It's a place where to share their experience, lesson learned, best practices. How we are handling is through e-discussions. We have also a LinkedIn profile with the network. We have also a newsletter that we provide monthly to our members. The members is already including more than 400 people, let's say with a wide component on greenhouse gases inventory people, that I think that it comes more from our previous technical support that we are providing since 2010. And so, but we are enlarging also to try to identify really a more wider audience, also looking at the NDC component and the adaptation component. So how do we address again? So we have a full website where you can access all the information that we have been producing. All the tools section that had to be still polished every day to include the new activity that we are doing. You can easily access it to the Transparency Network by clicking on the icons of the network part. Here on the webinars, you see also all the webinars that we already did, so you can see also the presentation and the recording of the webinar if you're interested to see really the topic. Working together, we are trying to highlight also the work that we are doing with the several agencies that we are working closely, and mostly they are the other transparency initiatives like the Global Support Program of a UNEP and UNDP, together with the UNFCCC indeed. The work that we are doing a lot also with the Partnership on Transparency for the Paris Agreement. So based on that, we try also to lead and come out also with a video talking about collaboration and coordination, because we know very well that all the work on transparency require, first of all, a very strong in the country institutional arrangements. That means also a very strong coordination among the different actors, stakeholders at the country level. What we want to show with this video is that also the agency started to understand that there is a way forward really to work a lot, strengthening the collaboration and ensuring that there is not an overlapping or a kind of a duplication of work, but indeed there is a lot for supporting the country. So it's better to understand what each one of us is doing and how we can move forward in order to improve the country capacity. So this is our work at FAO, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share our activities. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mirella. There's a lot of resources in there that I was unaware of, so I'm sure many of the people on the call were also unaware of them. Thank you. So now I will hand over to Eduardo Fuentes Navarro, who is one of the co-leads of the Low Carbon Livestock Research Network, which has an inventory development subgroup. So Eduardo, I will let you introduce yourself and the network.
Thank you, Hazel. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the invitation and also for the opportunity to present to you our network. I'm gonna share my screen. Let me, one second, please. So please, can you tell me if you see the screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So our network is a low carbon livestock research network. And this network was established in August 2020. It is a very young network, and it was created based on a common interest on developing strategies for low carbon livestock. And basically, it started with individual contact of researchers, mainly from Latin America. But then also we increased the number of the members based on the interaction between these institutions. The aim of the network, the Low Carbon Livestock Network, is first to improve the quantification and estimation of greenhouse gases emission and carbon capture in livestock systems, but also to identify mitigation options for a sustainable livestock. Finally, we expect also to improve the national inventories in the participant countries. About the members and the organization of our network. The network have different partner countries. Specifically from Latin America, we have Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, France, Mexico, Peru, but also we include 2 European countries, Spain and France. Sorry, Uruguay is from Latin America also. And the structure of our network is based in 4 subgroups, one related to rumen and soil microbiology, carbon and soil sequestration, modeling and inventory development, and finally, feed nutrition and manure management. What we do normally in the network, we organize general meetings. Since August 2020, we have already organized around 8 meetings. And in the meetings, we share and discuss about different topics, mainly related to low carbon livestock. For example, in one of the last meetings, we had a presentation about inventories. We prioritize the inventories because we believe that is one of the main issues that we have to strain capacities. And I also saw in the previous presentation that you emphasize also. So we organize a general meeting about inventories, and also to push the idea to why to do that, and why academia, for example, can support to the government in the improvement of inventories. No? Now, currently, our network has more than 65 people involved, mainly from the academia, but also we receive the support from GRA, from Hayden, that is participating very actively, providing us some suggestion for improve our organization. But basically about our subgroup, modeling and inventory development, we have two main goals. First, to evaluate and propose alternatives for sustainable livestock system based on models. We have experts in modeling, mainly from France, but in Latin American countries, we are also increasing the capacity for use modeling in livestock. But also we expect to contribute to the improvement of national inventories. Specifically, their initiative to adjust emission factors in order to have better values, mainly from Latin America. As activities, we are proposing in this subgroup, first, to use data to improve greenhouse gases emission and sequestration predictions. And the importance of having this network is that this modeling and inventory development subgroup can interact with the other subgroups to receive data and use the data. So that's why we provide a better inputs to our calculation. We don't use external data, no? We generate the data in the other subgroup and then we can use it for our purpose. But also to determine mitigation option and trade-off other nutrient losses, because we realize that to have a better estimation of greenhouse gases needs to be in an holistic way. So it's not only methane, but also other sources. Even when our organization has less than 1 year working, we have already gained some funds, mobility funds mainly, but that will allow us to interact more, of course, after the COVID pandemic ends. No? First is the Climate and Suit project. In this project, the idea is the network can transfer technology and competency in greenhouse gases emission to the country participants, no? To the members, but also to develop strong databases for greenhouse gases emission and carbon sequestration of pastoral system. One of the main constraints that we find is that mainly in Latin America, we don't have a very strong databases. So we are going to interact with all the country members and try to build a very strong database for use to estimate our greenhouse gases emission and carbon sequestration values. So, but also is that we would like to determine gaps and also to promote best management practices to increase livestock productivity, no? But to do this, first we need to work more in terms of databases. That's why I was talking about the importance of that. And finally, we would like to publish a policy brief that highlight the research findings to guide the country to achieve their national determination contribution. Also, I would like to say that that is a challenge, you know, because due to pandemic COVID-19, 2019, the mobility is restricted. So it means that most of our meetings are virtual, but we are doing some progress. At this stage, we are collecting information, and we expect probably at the end of this year have our meetings, presential meetings, in order to work harder in the second part, that is to determine the best management practices. but still we have one more year, and we expect to probably in the next meeting organized by GRA, we can present some results. Similarly, we have another fund from CICAT, and in this case specifically, what we propose is to estimate and improve national greenhouse gases inventories in the country members. Again, the idea is to compile regional data and development improve methodologies for estimating greenhouse gases inventories in the livestock sector of the country members. And in this project, we propose to involve other stakeholders, because we realize that maybe as academia, we can provide information, but if the information doesn't go to really key actors, unfortunately, the improvement will not be at national scale. So in this project, we propose also to evaluate the data, but also to have meetings with ministries, the industry, and provide strategies to have a more sustainable livestock production. No? And in that way, our network can increase the impact that we are expecting. So what are the perspectives for the future of our network? First, as I already said, it's a young network. It has less than 1 year. However, basically because most of the members are very active, we are achieving a lot of progress. However, we still need to work in collaboration. No? As I present, there are 9 countries, and sometimes some groups move more than other ones. Specifically, this group, the modeling and inventory development, is moving fast, and that is important because mainly the 2 projects I already showed are involved with inventories and NDCs. So it means that the really proactive status of this group show us the possibility to obtain the main goals. But also, we believe that this network can be an opportunity to include more stakeholders, and not only from Latin America. No? And I think this opportunity is very interesting for us, because we are open to collaborate with other researchers, but also with decision maker, policies, and other actors that we can interact for better results. So I think for the future, at least, we will be very busy with the projects, but also to interact with other stakeholders. No? For example, one of our members is now in Kenya, is in ILRI, and she's trying to also involve her institution. And I think that is one of the best things to work with people. No, there is also a dynamic process. People can move from one part to another, or to another institution, and in that way also to increase the visibility of our network, and also in activities like this. So thank you for your attention, and I don't know if there are some questions.
Great, thank you, Eduardo. And there's a common theme coming through in all the presentations, was the need for collaboration, the desire for collaboration, and that's the sort of purpose of this discussion. Could I get the presenters to come back on the screen, please? We've just got a 15-20 minutes worth of discussion questions to talk about. And if I could just start with a fairly general question that I posed there, I thought I'd give you a bit of advance warning. Having heard all the presentations, there was a lot of commonality between what we're doing. I'd like some ideas from the presenters. What do you see as a sort of areas where we could do better, where we could work better together? Natalie, I see a hand up. That's a good start.
Yes, I was just thinking it's really great to have all the presentations, and thanks to all the other presenters. But if we could have some sort of list or forum or some central location where we could have information about the various project groups, such as the countries that they're currently working in or would consider working in, their areas of expertise, such as national inventory, systems around governance, institutional arrangements, database development, mitigation, those types of things. It would be really helpful to be able to see who is working where and who the potential collaborators are as well.
Yeah, great. I think that's positive. Mirella, you had a hand up. You want to?
Yes, because I would like also to reply also to Natalie. In reality, we try already this experience under the umbrella of the FCC with the MRB and Transparency group of friends, where all the different agencies try to lay out what kind of project in which country we are working and what we are doing. So try to have a connection on there. Also, they have a kind of sort of share calendar where you can see who is doing what and when. They also complain that is not really working. So in my experience of working with several agencies, I see that, the more direct discussion with the different actors is something that really works. So we engage a little bit with some sort of a coordination call once a while. So that was great, for example, doing with Andreas, but I'm doing also with so many other agencies, under ICAT, the PAPTA, whatever, having UNEP, UNDP, having once a while coordination call to understand, okay, what we want to do in the near future, in which country we would like to work. And so sharing it, because that could help to understand, okay, no, I'm already doing something in that country, you can move forward in the other direction. So that's, I think that was the most positive experience. We have also our social media, also sharing in all the social media, we get aware, we extend the network. So I always invite ACIAR indeed also to share all kind of information in our network, and I would be happy also to do the same with the network of others. So this is my experience on collaboration.
Great, thank you. I think that's very positive. Hazel?
Yeah, I think I'll just add there as well that, Mirella, the LinkedIn group that you have is really quite great, and that's definitely in the back of our minds as something that potentially we could establish as a forum for communication for the network as well. So that's a really good initiative that you have.
One of the other speakers, from what you've heard? Oh, Elia, your hand's up.
Yes. Thank you. I really like the idea that Natalie suggested. And I think I also appreciate what Mirella introduced in terms of the forum. But I think apart from the forum, it would be good to have some kind of registry of interests and projects, current projects, which are run in different regions. Because you could go to forums, you could go to those websites, and you could be lost among many, many, many different options and opportunities. And it's great to explore it and be aware of it. But some kind of a table, a registry where you can see clearly who is working where, on what, and who wants to work where and on what, and which skill sets they can offer, that would be really very helpful to everyone, I think, to any network I heard about today.
Yeah, look, I mean, that sounds like something the network could be helping with. So thank you. One of the other speakers. Andreas.
I might come in from a totally different angle, if I may. You've all been very practical, making what can we do better now? I'm thinking that there appears to me to be a big gap in capacity building for regional institutions. So I'm thinking that the work that we're talking about doing now, in 10 years, we're still going to be talking about doing this work. What if we spent 10 years not only working with the countries, but also building the capacity of some regional institutions to provide that support to countries? And I feel that regional institutions is definitely not a focus. It's a gap at the moment. So I just throw that out there. I don't know what we can do about that, or if indeed people agree that's the case. But I think that's an issue it's worth keeping on the radar.
Do you mind expanding just a little bit? A regional institution as in a regional university, or just maybe a little bit more there?
Well, it probably depends who you are. I mean, it's really good to see the LCL network in Latin America coming up as a sort of a bottom-up network to coordinate among them. I'm thinking particularly the areas where we're working, so Africa, Southeast Asia. In Africa, there is no African institution that has a clear mandate and capacities to support countries on livestock inventories or agricultural inventories, similar in Southeast Asia. So I'm feeling it could be part of a solution to what we're all trying to do, but currently it doesn't exist.
Could also be a way of leaving a legacy.
I'd just like to comment on that. I think sometimes they do exist, but the connections haven't been formed between the particular regional institution and either other research organizations or government people. So sometimes it's more a matter of searching for what exists and strengthening the relationships between the organizations.
I wanted to say something here about the regional approach, which I totally share. And GHGMI actually already executed that approach. We have created MRV hub on Caribbean, which includes 12 countries, pretty much covering the entire English-speaking region on Caribbean islands. And all of those countries, or at least most of them, are SIDS, so small development countries. And this approach goes to institutionalization of the regional data, bringing up experts, a cooperative approach to solving regional problems in terms of greenhouse gas inventories, NDCs, etc. We have summer academy for these countries where we educate them, we give them workshops, etc. We have small sub-projects run across this region, helping to establish inventory systems and create the first inventories for those countries as well. So we have created the proposal of a similar structure for MRV hub for Pacific area, Pacific region. Unfortunately, we didn't get the funding for it yet, but the proposal is written, including all the activities. And I think it would be a wonderful thing to implement as a next step. And of course, similar things are now brewing in Central Asia under ICAT, and GHGMI is also involved in that, but it's also the regional approach. Similar thing is brewing in Africa. So yeah, it's wonderful direction, and I think that's the way to go, because developing countries can't afford to go all the way on their own in terms of resources, finances, etc. to implement all the requirements of the Paris Agreement, etc., etc. They will work together, sharing those burdens and capacities much better than on their own. That's GHGMI view anyway, and that's what they can bring to the table.
Right. I think that's something we can work with you on and look at trying to sort of link in with Andreas. Mirella, did you have a new hand up, or is that?
Just to talk about the issues of research and university, we are really believe that the research centers and the university, they should be part really of the discussion for enhancing the country capacity. And indeed, that is what we are trying to enroll for COP26 together with the UK presidencies. And indeed, the FAO is trying to work a lot with this network of a university and research center to try to bring them on the table and try to have them on board on the discussion on transparency and see really what we can do to reinforce their capacity, not at the regional level, but starting really at the national level capacity of the research center and the university in this discussion, and then to see how, Andreas, your ideas about who can then lead at the regional level this sort of core, these excellencies group of activities, for supporting the region in their specific elements. So yes, we are also really keen on working on the research center part and the university for engaging them in the discussion, for sure.
I would like to add something, and it is true, because, for example, in our network, most of the researchers use IPCC, publish papers, and also teach, greenhouse gases emission. However, they are not very linked to the ministries or to the government agencies. So that is a main issue. Even when in Latin America, at least, most of the countries, Andreas shows that are using tier 2, but the reality is that we need to improve a lot, for example, in emission factors. And I think that is a very important and critical issue if we would like to have better inventories.
Yeah, no, I think we're hearing that coming through as a priority. So I think that is something we as a network can take on board.
I'm just conscious of the time, and I'm aware that many of our presenters will probably have another meeting. I just have one quick question, actually. Valentina, I wonder if you could comment on this. In your experience in working with many different countries, do you foresee any issues that we may face in perhaps helping research institutes in regions provide the support in terms of perhaps a registry of projects or work going on in this space?
I'm sorry, I need to leave for another meeting, so I just was writing the message, trying to apologize because I need to connect for the next meeting. So may I answer this question just by email, or if you wish?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry to put you on the spot as you need to go. We'll send you an email.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye-bye. Thank you very much for invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
All right.
Hazel, if I may respond to your question. I think one of the challenges moving forward may be sort of there's definitely a need for additional research, but again, it sort of goes back to connecting the research with the in-country institutions. And given the pandemic over the last year, there's been a lot of shifting resources within those institutions. And so I think there might be a challenge with potential in-government buy-in and the necessary resources to help facilitate both that research development, but also the use of it, at least specific for inventories.
Thanks, John. Yeah, that is as I thought. Now, I think we probably are best to keep to the meeting time just because many of you potentially have meetings now already. So I just wanted to finish off with some closing comments. So thank you obviously to everyone for presenting today. I think it's been a really productive session. We've heard a little bit about a bunch of different resources, the US EPA toolkit, as well as the AFOLU tool, which is under further development. I think it was Mirella, you mentioned your e-learning resources for greenhouse gas inventories, as well as the network obviously that you have, the network that we have with the Low Carbon Livestock Research Network Inventory Development Group. Andreas also noted a couple of resources as well. We heard about the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Emission Factor Database and work that's being done to develop that a little bit further as well. I think we were getting key messages from all of our presenters, which is, I guess, reassuring to see and just reiterates the problems that we're all facing in avoiding duplication of work. So what we're talking about at the moment and being better connected, the importance of inventory frameworks, so institutional arrangements, connections, and also identifying and addressing capacity gaps and capability gaps, as well as avoiding outsourcing within those countries. So those were the key messages that I had. I'm sure there's many more that I missed. Richard, did you have anything to add? No? Cool. So yeah, I just want to thank everyone once again, and we will put this recording up on the GRA YouTube website, and we're looking forward to having you all present again in 1.5 days. So thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.